Welcome to Module 4 for ED 584. The purpose of this module is that Module 4 serves as a transition from our study of descriptive statistics, probability, normal distributions, and sampling distributions to that of hypothesis testing and inferential statistical procedures in education. Inferential procedures begin with the researcher articulating a hypothesis, which can be stated in the null or alternative forms about a population, and then testing that hypothesis to see if it appears to be correct based on an interpretation of statistical analysis. The goal of inferential statistics is to infer findings from a sample to that of a population. In review, a critical aspect that allows for this is that the sample has been selected through some form of random selection process. The extent to which we can correctly infer the sample findings to that of the population is called external validity. For this module, we are particularly concerned with hypothesis testing of the means. More specifically, we will examine the z-test procedure, which forms the basic foundation of many other procedures. The purpose of the z-test procedure is to test hypotheses concerning a single population with a known variance. Because the z-test requires information about the population that we often do not have, such as variance, we also begin to explore other procedures that are more commonly used. Specifically, we begin looking at one form of a t-test, that being a independent sample t-test. This test procedure serves the same purpose as the z-test, but does not require us to know the population variance. We use the one independent sample t-test to compare our sample data to that of the known population parameter, mean in this case. We are interested to know if the population from which our sample was taken has the same mean value as that of the known population parameter. For a one independent samples t-test, the purported population mean is stated and is either being tested to see if in fact the purported value is valid or if a sample from another population is the same. Either way, the results indicates whether the sample mean is representative of the purported population mean. Two independent samples t-tests are also studied. This form of the t-test is used to investigate whether or not a statistical difference exists between groups. Assumptions associated with this test required that the sample was randomly selected, that the population from which the sample is drawn is normally distributed, and that the two samples are independent from each other. Like with other hypothesis tests, the null hypothesis is tested through the use of the t-test procedure. Finding a statistically significant difference leads us to follow-up procedures. Effect size is studied and calculated as a statistic that represents the size of the difference of a statistically significant finding. Power is then examined. Power represents the likelihood that we will reject the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis is false. It is interesting to reflect on the fact that a statistically significant finding may not have any practical implications if the difference found is minimal. Thus, the importance of also examining effect size. One of the issues can be that with large sample size, very small differences between means may show a statistical difference that does not represent any practical difference. That is where effect size comes into play, and many research journals require researchers to report the effect size of their findings within published research manuscripts. Okay, so that's the introduction. Here are the objectives for this learning module. For the readings from the Statistics for the Behavioral Sciences, Chapter 8 on hypothesis testing, and there's also the PowerPoint slideshow that goes with it. There's also a hypothesis testing YouTube video. Then Chapter 9, testing the means, 1 sample and 2 independent sample t-tests, the PowerPoint that goes along with that, and then also you will have the YouTube video. From how to use SPSS, Chapter 6.1 through 6.2, hypothesis testing and single sample t-test. For the assessments, and I will get this fixed, there is no quiz, as I reported in one of the earlier modules. There's the Module 4 reflected commentary, and then the first assignment. The first assignment will be due during this learning module. For the next module, we examine paired sample t-test, estimation, and confidence intervals as addressed within Chapter 10 and 11 of the Statistics for the Behavioral Sciences. Go ahead and start early if you wish, and here are the links. And again, there's no quiz, and I will correct this introduction part for Module 4. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Take care.